The galaxy had celebrated for decades after the final transmission from Earth fell silent. The great alien empires, the ruthless Kar Dominion, the calculating Vex Collective, the fanatical Solari Ascendancy, and dozens more, believed humanity had finally been erased. Every colony had been burned, every fleet shattered, every record of human civilization destroyed. Yet one problem remained. A single human life sign kept appearing across the stars. It surfaced on abandoned stations, forgotten mining worlds, pirate strongholds, and even inside the most heavily guarded military installations, before vanishing again without explanation. Governments called him the last human. A 1 trillion credit bounty was placed on his head, and the greatest hunters in galactic history competed for the prize. Entire armadas chased whispers, tracking impossible escape routes through black holes, nebulae, and collapsed wormholes, but every pursuit ended the same way, with wrecked ships, disabled weapons, empty command bridges, and a single message carved into steel in perfect galactic standard: "You're following the wrong trail." Stories spread that the last human possessed impossible technology, could predict the future, or had become something more than mortal. Fear replaced confidence as elite strike teams disappeared without firing a shot. The galaxy assumed he was desperately fleeing extinction, clinging to survival while hiding in the shadows. They never considered another possibility. On the barren moon of Carthus Prime, the Galactic Council finally cornered him. Thousands of warships formed an iron wall across orbit, while millions of soldiers surrounded the ancient ruins where the human had been spotted. Every weapon in the sector was aimed at one lone figure, wearing weathered black armor scarred by centuries of battle. He carried no visible army, no massive fleet, no advanced battle suit beyond an old rifle slung across his shoulder. The Supreme Commander stepped forward and declared, "You have nowhere left to run, human." The man looked up slowly, his calm gray eyes scanning the countless ships overhead, and then he smiled. Not the smile of someone defeated, but of someone who had been waiting. "Running?" he asked softly. "Who told you I was running?" Before anyone could answer, the stars themselves seemed to awaken. Across every corner of the system, dormant objects that had drifted unnoticed for thousands of years activated simultaneously. Broken asteroids unfolded into colossal human dreadnoughts. Dead moons split apart to reveal hidden shipyards. Ancient satellites disguised as debris ignited with brilliant blue light. Entire fleets that had slept in silence since humanity's disappearance emerged from the darkness. The alien commanders stared in disbelief as millions of warships appeared, where empty space had existed only seconds before. Every vessel bore the forgotten emblem of Earth. It was not a surviving fleet. It was the largest armada the galaxy had ever witnessed. The lone human had never been hiding from them. He had been leading them. For 70 years he had deliberately left clues, allowing every empire to follow his trail, mapping their fleets, studying their tactics, exposing their political alliances, and slowly drawing every major military force into a single region of space. Every chase, every escape, every mysterious appearance had been part of one enormous strategy. Humanity's final admiral had spent decades gathering his enemies into the perfect battlefield. As alien fleets scrambled into defensive formations, thousands of hidden quantum relays activated across the galaxy, shutting down enemy communications and navigation systems in an instant. Panic spread as ships collided, weapon grids failed, and command networks collapsed. The human raised one hand and the ancient fleet moved with terrifying precision. There was no chaos, no confusion, only absolute coordination refined through centuries of preparation. The first volley never missed. Entire battleship formations vanished under coordinated railgun strikes traveling at relativistic speeds. Carrier groups were disabled without destroying their crews. Orbital fortresses that had taken centuries to build crumbled within minutes. Every move the alien commanders attempted had already been anticipated because the human had spent decades studying each civilization's doctrine. It was not a battle. It was the execution of a plan older than most governments. Then the Admiral opened a channel to every living being in the galaxy. "You hunted me because you believed I was the last survivor. You were wrong. I was the last scout." His words echoed across billions of worlds. "While you searched for one human, the rest of humanity rebuilt beyond your maps. We crossed the void between galaxies. We found allies older than your civilizations. We became stronger because you forced us to become stronger. Today is not humanity's revenge. It is your lesson. At that moment, hyperspace fractured open above every major world, as unimaginably vast human fleets arrived from intergalactic space, their ships dwarfing planets, carrying technologies that bent gravity, folded time, and silenced stars without destroying them. Yet instead of annihilating their enemies, the humans disabled every weapon in the galaxy. The Admiral had not returned to commit genocide. Humanity remembered what it had once been like to stand on the edge of extinction. Entire populations that had been ruled by fear watched as their oppressive empires surrendered without another shot. The tyrants who had started the extermination campaign were arrested by their own citizens after their power vanished overnight. The Galactic Council dissolved, replaced by representatives from every species, including those once considered too weak to matter. When reporters later asked the Admiral why he had spent 70 years letting the galaxy hunt him, his answer became one of the most quoted lines in history. Because hunters reveal everything about themselves while chasing prey. Humanity was never the prey. Humanity had been the patient predator, setting the largest trap the universe had ever seen. And from that day forward, every child in every corner of the galaxy learned the same warning. If a human appears to be running, look behind you. Centuries after the fall of the old Galactic Council, historians would forever divide time into two eras, before the hunt and after the hunt. Yet very few knew what happened in the days immediately following the surrender. As billions celebrated the end of the war, Admiral Elias Voss, the man every empire had believed to be the last human, stood alone on the observation deck of the flagship Resolute, watching the stars in silence. Victory had never been his goal. Survival had been. Long before Earth fell, humanity had discovered something hidden beyond the edge of known space. An ancient signal repeating every 11 years from a region where even light seemed afraid to travel. The first explorers who investigated it never returned, but they left behind fragmented data, speaking of an intelligence so old that the oldest civilizations had erased all knowledge of it from their records. When the alien empires united to destroy humanity, they unknowingly forced mankind to flee toward that forbidden frontier. There, beyond the mapped galaxy, humanity did not merely survive, it evolved. Entire generations were born aboard colossal arc worlds drifting between galaxies. Scientists unlocked technologies capable of folding dimensions. Engineers learned to build cities around miniature stars, and soldiers trained not for conquest but for the day they would ensure no civilization could ever attempt another genocide. Hidden among ancient ruins older than the universe itself, humanity encountered the mysterious architects, a civilization that had transcended physical existence millions of years earlier. The architects had watched countless species rise and fall, but humanity fascinated them because humans possessed one rare quality no equation could predict. They refused to surrender even when logic declared defeat inevitable. Rather than giving humanity weapons, the architects offered knowledge, warning that an even greater danger was awakening. Deep within intergalactic darkness slept an entity known only as the Devourer, a cosmic intelligence that consumed entire galaxies every few billion years before moving on. Every empire that had hunted humanity believed itself to be the apex of evolution, unaware that they were insects living on borrowed time. Humanity realized that the coming invasion would require every species to stand together. That was why Admiral Voss had refused to exterminate his enemies. A dead galaxy could never defend itself. While diplomats rebuilt governments and former enemies slowly became allies, long-range sensors on the frontier detected something impossible. Entire clusters of stars began disappearing, not exploding, not collapsing, simply vanishing as if erased from existence. Refugee fleets arrived carrying impossible stories of planets swallowed by shadows larger than solar systems, and civilizations wiped out without transmitting a single distress call. Then, for the first time in recorded history, the architects spoke to every intelligent species simultaneously. It has awakened. Panic swept across thousands of worlds. Even humanity's unimaginable fleet suddenly looked small against what the sensors revealed. Beyond the rim of the galaxy stretched a wall of darkness millions of light-years wide, moving silently toward them. It was not a fleet. It was a living intelligence composed of trillions of biomechanical constructs linked together as one mind. Entire stars burned inside its body like cells inside a creature beyond comprehension. The Devourer had arrived centuries earlier than predicted, because the wars of the younger races had filled space with enough energy to attract its attention. Every species looked to humanity, the civilization they had once hunted to extinction. Admiral Voss addressed the United Galaxy from the bridge of the Resolute. "This is why I stayed alive. This is why humanity returned. We didn't spend 70 years preparing to defeat you. We spent 70 years preparing to save you." For the first time in history, every fleet in the galaxy fought under a single banner. Human dreadnoughts stood beside car battlecruisers. Vex drone swarms protected human carriers, and species that had hated each other for millennia fought shoulder to shoulder. The last human was no longer the galaxy's most wanted fugitive. He had become its final hope. As the United Armada accelerated toward the approaching darkness, billions watched the stars, knowing that the greatest battle in the history of the universe was about to begin, not for territory, not for power, but for the right of every civilization to have a future. And as Admiral Voss looked into the endless void ahead, he whispered the same words every human recruit had spoken for generations. "If humanity stands, the galaxy stands. If humanity falls, let us fall moving forward." The first clash against the Devourer lasted only 17 minutes, yet those 17 minutes became the most studied battle in galactic history. The United Armada unleashed enough firepower to shatter entire star systems. Human singularity cannons bent space itself. Car antimatter lances split moons in half. Vex quantum swarms infected enemy machines. And the ancient architects awakened weapons that had remained dormant since before the birth of the Milky Way. None of it mattered. The darkness simply absorbed the attacks as if the energy had never existed. Then it answered. A single pulse rippled across space, and over 20,000 Allied warships vanished without an explosion, without debris, without even a distress signal. It was as though reality itself had forgotten they had ever existed. Silence spread across every command bridge. For the first time since humanity's return, Admiral Elias Voss looked genuinely concerned. He ordered an immediate retreat, not out of fear, but because he finally understood what they were fighting. The Devourer was not destroying matter. It was erasing information, rewriting the universe so its victims had never existed. Every second the battle continued, pieces of history disappeared. Entire civilizations found old monuments changing before their eyes. Star maps no longer matched the sky. Ancient records began rewriting themselves as if lost species had never lived at all. The galaxy was not simply losing a war. It was losing its own memory. Back aboard the flagship Resolute, humanity revealed the one secret it had kept from every ally. Deep beneath the ship rested the Genesis core, an artifact entrusted to humanity by the architects. It contained a perfect record of reality itself, a blueprint of every star, every planet, every species, and every moment since intelligent life first emerged. The architects had not chosen humanity because humans were the strongest. They had chosen them because humans remembered. They preserved stories, history, art, names, and sacrifices long after others had forgotten. As long as one human remembers, the architect had once said, the universe can be rebuilt. Admiral Voss realized the only way to defeat the Devourer was not with greater weapons, but with something it could never comprehend: the human refusal to let memories die. Across millions of worlds, civilians joined the battle in their own way. Libraries opened every archive. Children copied history by hand. Artists painted forgotten heroes. Musicians performed songs centuries old. Families recorded the names of their ancestors. Every memory became an act of resistance. Every story became a weapon. Human scientists linked trillions of minds into the Genesis core, creating the largest shared consciousness ever assembled. When the Devourer launched another wave to erase reality, it encountered something impossible: a civilization that had stored itself not in machines alone, but in the hearts and minds of countless beings. The more it erased, the more people remembered. The harder it attacked, the stronger the network became. For the first time in billions of years, the Devourer hesitated. That single moment was all Admiral Voss needed. The Resolute accelerated directly toward the heart of the cosmic entity, its engines burning brighter than a newborn star. Every surviving human battleship followed without hesitation. There were no speeches, no dramatic farewells. Every captain already knew the mission was one way. The fleet entered the center of the darkness and activated the Genesis core. A wave of impossible light spread across the void, carrying every memory, every hope, every sacrifice, and every story humanity had ever preserved. The Devourer, a being that could consume matter and erase history, faced the one force it had never encountered, a species that believed memories were worth dying for. The collision illuminated the galaxy for 3 straight days. When the light finally faded, the darkness was gone. Stars that had vanished returned to the sky. Lost worlds reappeared. Entire civilizations remembered their histories once again. But the Resolute and Admiral Elias Voss were nowhere to be found. Some believed he had died. Others believed he had become part of the Genesis core itself, watching over the galaxy from beyond time. Every year thereafter, on the anniversary of the final hunt, every species paused for 1 minute of silence before reciting the words engraved upon the restored ruins of Earth. They hunted the last human because they believed he was alone. They discovered too late that wherever one human stands, humanity stands with him. And from that day onward, no child in the galaxy ever grew up asking why humans were feared. Instead, they learned why humans were trusted. Because when the universe itself was about to be forgotten, it was humanity that chose to remember everyone.